There are many mysteries in this universe, and I assure you that the question posed in this video will be of utmost importance. Where are the men in gacha games? A trend that's been pretty jarring in the past couple years in this area of mobile gaming has become quite apparent. Collecting characters in gacha games is sort of the entire premise, yet many casual and mainstream titles have seemed to forego one side of the gender spectrum. It's now almost a meme that a male character will get released like once a year, maybe once every 2 years, and maybe not at all after the game launched. The question is, why is that? Well, I've been consulting with fellow terminally online gacha gaming experts, and I think I reached a conclusion. I actually don't know. Now, I do have numerous theories, but all of them have holes or inconsistencies that can't account for all these scenarios. I'll present what these are and also argue with myself why the theories don't hold water. Why don't we start answering, how did this trend even start? Well, let's look at some current examples. In Wuthering Waves, 10 of the current 48 characters are male, discounting the protagonist. Only 5 have been released as limited SSRs post-launch. Its close neighbor, PGR, has only recently released its non-call-out male character in 2 years. The same trend persists in other big company titles like Hoyoverse Games or Enfield. Some games release a few male characters at launch and just never release more, like KL0 Nightmare or Mongil Stardive. None of this is criticism, but just a weird trend that seems to happen all the time. Except, if you look at historical evidence, this trend has been in gacha games since the beginning. Ever since the genre started having a bigger emphasis on story and world building, even the pioneers of the genre started out with this formula. Grand Blue Fantasy and Fate Grand Order both have disproportionate amounts of females to males. In FGO, the female characters get dedicated swimsuit versions with whole new kits while the guys only get alternate skins. What I'm trying to say is that this isn't the work of Genshin Impact once again, as this pattern has been a thing throughout gacha history. I'm not mentioning the games with an all-male or all-female cast as well. Otome gacha games do exist, and so do games like Snowbreak. The focus of this video is cast to the games with mixed gender rosters. This leads us to the analysis portion of this truly mind-boggling dilemma. It's important to also understand the business model of gacha games. While the majority of areas within the game can be enjoyed for free, the game primarily makes its money through selling characters for you to pull on via a simulated slot machine. The company has a vested interest to make said characters desirable either by their design, gameplay features, or emotional impact during the story. While anyone can choose to pull for whatever character for whatever reason, there will be trends that push developers to design new characters in a certain way to cater to its core audience. Depending on the presentation of the game, such as if it has 2D or 3D graphics, coming up with a new character can be a lot of work, so you really want to make every design count to market and contribute to the healthy development of the game. You can say that they're literally staking the game's future on its ability to make good characters. After some cooking in the research lab, I will present 5 different theories on why male characters are underrepresented. Some of them are more plausible than others, but I ultimately think that none of them make the perfect case for the question of this video. But you can be the judge of that. The first theory is rather simple. The reason that male characters aren't very prevalent in gacha gaming is that they simply don't sell as well. This is immediately proven false. I only have to show the examples of all-male casts like Love and Deep Space or Light and Night to show that the audience for male characters is absolutely massive if you can break into it. If that's the case, why not make the roster more balanced so that you can maximize the interests of all players, regardless of their gender preference in gacha characters? If you take a look at Genshin Impact, a lot of its most popular characters are male. This was my first line of thinking, but I believe it's the weakest argument that one can come up with. If a gacha game had the budget of the giants in the industry but did a 50-50 gender ratio, who's to say that the chance the game fails is high? All it takes is one ambitious developer to come out and prove that a truly mixed gender roster can work. The second theory sort of connects to the first one, and it ties into the idea that gacha games wish to target one specific audience as its core fanbase. Statistically, most gamers are male, so it makes sense to cater to them more often. Since gacha games are meant to create a fantasy anyways, why not make more waifu characters so they want to pull for them? If that's the case though, why not just make the entire cast female? Why have these black sheeps come in and disturb the balance? If the intended audience of a game is for guys, why would you purposefully handicap yourself by making these characters that's likely to appeal less to said audience? All-female roster games like Girls Frontline, Snowbreak, and Uma Musume are extremely successful, so the possibility definitely exists. If you wanted to create these male characters that are meant to treat you like a brother or best friend, why not just make them into non-playable NPCs? Games like Nikke have done this and it's worked out fine. Okay, but it could also be because these games want a small female audience too. And hey, if you're a gay man, you might be inclined to pull for them as well, so it tries to keep that option open just in case they come up with a good male design that the developers can capitalize on later. This is where things get questionable too. Why specifically a small audience then? What's the reasoning that you want a majority male audience but a fraction in females? Why make this as the core audience? It begs the question that, again, if you wanted to target both demographics, why not just make the gender ratio more balanced? If you want a hard commit to one side only, then why not make all the in-game characters one gender specifically? We may be getting closer to the truth, but this theory doesn't seem to fit flawlessly either. The next line of thinking is that the disproportionate roster simply serves as a PR stunt. Games want to make its reach as big as possible by inviting in as many players as they can, and to create the impression that it's not just gooner bait. If you had a poster of the game to be displayed in public, you'd have enough excuse to throw in characters from both genders to make the impression that it's rated E for everyone. If you targeted only one demographic, then it's possible that game may not be enough to reach mainstream appeal. Big budget games don't want that. They want everyone from 13-year-old Timmy to my 80-year-old grandma to feel welcome to the game. You don't want blue archives, you want more Genshin impacts. This gives them just enough pretext to throw in the occasional male character to create that illusion, even if doing so may not be wholly desirable to the core audience. Except, this doesn't really work either. There's no evidence to say that marketing a game with a mixed gender has that much effect on appearing mainstream, because I can point out several cases of gacha games approaching the mainstream level without mixed gender rosters. Look at the explosive popularity of Uma Musume when it was first released. Basically every big streamer and content creator talked or played the game. There's no doubt that it launched globally with no controversies and was universally beloved. It proves that there's no real impact on the reception of a game if it has an all-female roster. Not only that, you can argue that the game has gooner elements and doesn't seem like a good fit at all as mainstream media, but there it is. Doing fine, garnering overwhelming praise from those that tried it. I can only conclude that having a mixed gender roster has no significant impact on the perception of the game or its level of mainstream appeal. The next one is pretty interesting, and one that I thought to be the most plausible, though I just lack the actual stats to prove it. I call it the optimal revenue ratio theory. I'll start by saying something that I think most people know but don't really think about. The majority of the revenue of any gacha game, no matter how big or small, comes from a small minority of whales. While these games can be played for free, though often, many players do pay a little here and there to fund their hobby. But this level of revenue cannot sustain a high-budget gacha game. If everyone paid like $5 a month, then the game likely won't survive for long. It is to a game's best interest to incorporate mechanics that try to capture whales, those that are willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars on the game. These people fund the game for the non-spenders and allow everyone to play the game at their rates. While whaling in Western gaming culture is more stigmatized than in the East, whales do exist. I met a few over the years. It's just that no one likes to admit that they spend $1,000 on a PNG file. But what does this have to do with the lack of male characters? Well, there are many ways a game might incentivize spending, like having a leaderboard or powerful gear that can be tagged onto the initial version of a character. However, different player demographics may have different spending trends. For example, players over the age of 30 may be more likely to whale on the game versus a younger player. Female players may have a different spending trend than male players. The theory goes something like this. In order to statistically maximize the revenue for a game, past trends have pointed out that players that do want to pull for male characters are more likely to be whales. Say, someone that just wants to collect husbandos. Due to the scarcity of this commodity, These players are more willing to go all out to max out their upgrades when a male character does get released. Meanwhile, while I'm sure there are players that want the best for their favorite waifus, a lot of these waifu-centric players are non-spenders or don't spend enough to be a valuable whale. They don't contribute to the game financially that much, but they do still play the game and will continue to do so. The male characters may not make as much money overall as the females, but a small group of players are very passionate about it, leading to a much higher money spent per player ratio. Of course, while this was the most plausible theory, I don't have the concrete historical data to prove it. While you can sort of look at publicly available revenue charts and predict if it's true, no one knows for sure how accurate these are. Lastly, let's focus on the possibility that gacha games are meant to create a fantasy in which you're loved by everyone and you're the big boss with all the power and aura. I propose the parasocial angle. I'm theorizing that female relationships are more sophisticated and more diverse to portray, so a game has more flexibility to create that fantasy. It's worth mentioning that views on LGBT sentiments are not as progressive in the regions that create gacha games. Asian countries are not as open to same-sex relationships, even if they're only implied. Namely, gay relationships between two males seems to be less culturally acceptable than two females. I don't wish to get political, but there's also a raging gender war that's present in some of these regions, and writing male characters is simply too much risk in a gacha game with a mixed gender. Unless a game is strictly husbandos only, the game can become too prone to controversies and backlash if the way relationships are written lean towards a certain way the audience does not want. In any big-budget gacha game with romance or fan service tropes, it's to the developer's benefit to create a fantasy, but don't portray certain relationships in ways that may raise concerns from players. You only have to go so far to see the number of NTR debacles to see what kind of stuff gets a developer into trouble. As a customer of these products, you're simply demanding to the developer, we're the ones funding this game. You will write the characters the way we want you to. From this, the low male ratio is a byproduct of certain cultural expectations. But hey, that's just my little game theory. These are the 5 theories I've come up with. It could be one of these theories, or it could be a combination of them. Of course, none of them could be correct, and it's something else entirely. But anyways, I've been writing a bunch of shower thoughts in the past couple days, so let me know what you think. The reason for the lack of characters with cocks will continue to haunt the gacha space in the meantime. Truly, a perplexing mystery with no real answer.